Welcome to Leadership Deprogrammed. In this program, we ask you to examine all that you believe and know about leadership. For instance, if I say, or when I say, who's a leader, who comes to your mind? Do you think of yourself? Well, we're here to run this program until you can raise your hand and say, I am a leader, when I ask the question, who's a leader? We've all been taught that leaders don't look like us, they may not be educated that way, and that leaders really exist in a certain system. Well, I'm here to offer you that leadership is about us, and we are the ones who need to be leaders in our lives to change our lives. If you want to change your family, your community, even your organization, then you need to put on your leadership mantle and lead from where you are. I am Maxine Attong, and this is Leadership Deprogrammed. I am so excited today. I'm excited and I'm nervous and I'm really happy because my guest today is Nanci Jiménez. And Nanci is someone I met many years ago. She's a certified professional facilitator, and I actually met her when I was going for my certification in professional facilitation. And so Nanci is somebody who I really look up to because she just blazes a trail. She has a lot of courage, and more importantly, a lot of compassion and empathy. So it's really, really a great pleasure and an honor and a privilege for me to be able to introduce you, our audience, to Nanci Luna. Hi, Nanci.
Hey, Maxine. It's so good to see you. I'm really honored to be with you and to join the community that you've built around your program, Leadership Deprogrammed.
Good. Thank you, Nanci. So, Nanci, I'm not going to say any more about you. So I want you to introduce yourself to our audience.
Fair enough. Well, something to know about me is that I am an Afro-Caribbean Mexican indigenous woman, and I think that's important because it informs how I lead and what I value in leadership, which is definitely vulnerability, relationship, and equity and social justice, the value of reciprocity, and the power of the gift of dana, what I describe as the Hindu principle of dana. And so I want you all to know I didn't start out thinking that I would be doing this for my life. I was 26 years old when I attended a session with a woman who I didn't know at the time and who eventually became my mentor and now my dear friend. Her name is Lillian Roybal Rose. And there were so many moments in that particular workshop that there were probably 60 community members gathered at the YWCA in Watsonville, California, where I felt that she was speaking directly to me, even though there were so many people there. And many things that she said really touched me. At the time, my activism was built on injury. My leadership was fighting for justice, but replicating pain. And she said that no movement you are a part of will be any healthier than you are. And those words really, at first I resisted them. I didn't want them to be true, and I wanted to point out all the ways I was healthy and I was effective, but I couldn't ignore what she was saying because I could see my own pain and injury running through my leadership and through my movement work. And it's when I really started to take seriously that oppression has left its residue on us. It's confused us about who we are and what's possible. And at that point, my leadership was from the place of, as soon as you change, my life is going to go better.
Yes.
So all of my energy and effort was, obviously futile because you cannot change others. That is not how it works. But I was determined. And in fact, I remember very clearly that sort of my mantra or modus operandi was, as soon as white people feel as bad as I feel because of racism, they're going to stop it, right? And of course, you give all your power away when you're trying to change others. It's a misunderstood effect of what oppression, racism in particular, and sexism as a female are internalized, right? And these are the effects of colonization. These are the effects of white supremacy, of patriarchy, that I internalize these messages that are truly built in powerlessness.
Yeah.
And as I began my journey with Lillian, which at first she wasn't thrilled, I went up to her afterwards and I was like, please, I want to do what you do. I've never seen anyone lead this work from a place of healing and connection and relationship and compassion. It was gorgeous. And I knew I wasn't there and I wanted to be there. And eventually we started traveling together and I learned from her. And so much of what I learned from her is what I bring to the world today. So I think of my work as legacy work, that it's Lillian's leadership that she learned from her mentor, Dr. Erica Sheriver-Marcusa. And so although I never met Ricky, I feel like I am leading their work for the next generation. So nothing I bring is trendy or the new fancy work. It's really tried and true effort around how we think about ourselves as leaders, that all of us are born leaders, and that we need each of us leading if we're going to have a just world.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Nanci. What I love about it is that it actually hinges into what we advocate for on the program, that leadership isn't out there, it's in here. And I just love the idea that we can't change other people, we can change ourselves. And the more we change, the more other people will gravitate to our example. We can mirror to people what it looks like, and so we could really bring change to the system. So you put a lot on the table there, so we're gonna take a break, and when we come back, we're gonna dive into a few pieces there. Thank you so much.
The 4th Annual Caribbean Gestalt Leadership Conference on April 29th, 2021. Join Maxine Attong, Dr. Rama Naidu from South Africa, and Nanci Luna Jiménez from the US as they discuss how to create equity at your workplace. This is a virtual event.
I'm delighted to be on the panel at the 4th Annual Gestalt Caribbean Leadership Conference, which will be happening virtually on Thursday, April 29th. The focus of this year's conference is leading with equity.
Register at maxineattong.com or call 724-7642 to register.
He is a leader in the gospel fraternity.
When the pressure start come, not for you water.
Trinidad and Tobago's very own Sherwin Gardner is coming to WESN this Friday the 16th at 7 a.m. The Bread and Butter Morning Show with Jason Williams and Keaton Shah. International gospel recording artist The Intellect, Sherwin Gardner, live via Zoom, only on WESN, your content capital.
Hi, I'm Rakaya Scott, and join me here every Wednesday at 10 a.m. for One-on-One Season 2 on WESN Content Capital. One-on-One is that show where we're going to have meaningful and difficult conversations on topics that we usually shy away from. So don't forget, every Wednesday at 10 a.m., One-on-One Season 2 on WESN Content Capital.
My name is Nanci Luna Jiménez, and I'm the founder and president of LJIST. If you're watching this video, it means you've made a commitment to create a more just and equitable community and world. Perhaps you or your organization are just beginning on your equity journey, or maybe you're looking to deepen and expand the tools and skills you already have. In either case, it means you're willing to take risks. You're here to learn new ways of thinking and approaching this important work. Anger is a thin cover for grief, and who in this room is not heartbroken about what is happening in our society today to poor people? If we are not heartbroken, we're numb, and to be numb is another form of basically dehumanization.
Welcome back to Leadership Deprogrammed, and you would have just seen a clip of our guest this morning, Nanci Luna Jiménez. And what's so significant about Nanci is that she has committed her entire life and her work to this cause around equity, around all the isms that we face, and really making people more aware of it. And what I love about what Nanci was saying is before the break is that she needed to be what she is projecting and what she's advocating. So changing herself allowed her to lead in a particular way that will bring about change. And just to let you know that Nanci, why I'm really super excited is because Nanci is also a panelist on our upcoming 4th annual Gestalt Caribbean Leadership Conference. And that takes place on April 29th, and Nanci is going to be part of that. I'm super excited. So Nanci, a little bit, you shared with us before the break a little bit about how you started the work. Can you share with us what that work looks like and what do you hope for in terms of an outcome?
Yes, so let me just say, I'm really excited about being on the panel as well for this conference. So thank you so much for inviting me to participate in this year's event. And I'm honored to be with the other panelists as well. So I'll say a little bit about, I started this organization with the explicit goal of ending racism, which I think is, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
There we go. But so I started this organization with the explicit goal of ending racism, which of course we can't end one oppression without all oppressions being ended. But the vision I've had and what I've tried to hold out, because when you say, I'm going to end racism, that feels huge and big, impossible and untenable. Mm-hmm. And yet I often use the image of oppression like an interwoven blanket. And what we know about we who are weavers is that you just need a snag on one of those threads and you're going to undo the whole blanket. Yeah. And so I often encourage people that if there's one part of this blanket that you're passionate about, that you can tell has had an impact on your life, that you know is no longer working, and you can stay focused and dogged and clear about that, you pull on that thread, the whole blanket will unweave. And so that's one of the ways that I try to remind us that everything that feels bigger than us isn't bigger than us. And I remind us that, racism had a beginning, it didn't always exist, and it can have an end. And that we have everything we need now in our hands, in our knowledge base, but more importantly, in the human capacity that we came into the world with, to heal from the effects of oppression and no longer continue to perpetuate them. So when I started this organization, there was a couple things I misunderstood about the work of ending racism. I thought, I'm going to get to work with all these great people of color. It's going to be awesome. We're going to be totally empowered. And then I was like, whoops, racism is passed on from white people to white people. And I was like, this means I need to learn how to think about, listen to, work with, become an expert in understanding how white people themselves got hurt. Yeah. So that was one of the first things for me to understand, because no white baby is born into the world thinking that they're going to hurt and target people of color. They have to be hurt into that experience. And Lillian had a brilliant, and still a brilliant design that I've continued, which is she doesn't begin with racism, because it's like all oppressions can be really polarizing. We feel that there's an us-them divide. And she figured out that if we can all understand the concept of adultism as an institutional oppression that dehumanizes young people and is the training ground for all other oppressions, and it becomes visible to us, then that which has been invisible for many people who are on the non-target side, so white people on the non-target side of racism, they can begin to unpack and see they've internalized these messages, that this was not how they believe or that they want to act from. That's not their value base. And so adultism is this radical, I think, untalked about, unacknowledged oppression. And it's not about bad parents or bad adults. Again, we're talking about systems. We have to pull it out of the individual dynamic, interpersonal dynamic. And so I will often say people, do you remember as a young person when you were considered simply not believable because it was your word against an adult's? That's the idea, right, of that's adultism at play. Or the time you would gladly have given up your bed when your relative was going to come visit, and then you were told where you would be sleeping. But I see it, you can see it institutionally, right? The youngest children in our institutional systems are put in centers where we have with teachers with the least pay, least job security, least training, least benefits, least dignity. And then if you go up the educational system to university, they're almost adults, and yet those people that interact with young people have the most pay, most status, most education, most benefits, most recognition, dignity in the world of education. So that's an example, systematically, the way that we've seen parents taken, mostly mothers, out of the workforce because our society in the US, I can speak, prioritized having restaurants and bars open before schools. So it was like the economy trumped the well-being of young people and education. Social and socioeconomic factors played a larger role than the socio-psychological and health and well-being of young people and families.
Yeah.
So these are some examples of how adultism has played out. And I think it's at the root of where we don't think we're powerful to change the world either. So where I thought I was doing a program and with the outcome of ending racism, I realized I was really doing a leadership program. Like, if people don't see themselves as significant to end oppression, it can't end.
Yeah, a few things that I love about that, Nanci, in terms of, what we talk about in organizations. So definitely setting a vision, one. Two, meeting people where they're at. So it's not just about ending racism, it's about being able to talk to white people and say, this is where you're at. I think a big piece there is around the change management. I'm not here to scare you. I am here to listen. I am here to hold your hand. I'm here to walk with you. And of course, I am mirroring with compassion and empathy that I understand what you're going through. And that whole sense of hope in that racism is a huge, huge thing. And we can hope that by pulling that one thread, I love the metaphor, pulling that one thread out of the woven blanket, that we could actually just dismantle it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a break, and then we're going to come right back to delve into that a little bit more.
The 4th Annual Caribbean Gestalt Leadership Conference on April 29th, 2021. Join Maxine Attong, Dr. Rama Naidu from South Africa, and Nanci Jiménez from the US as they discuss how to create equity at your workplace. This is a virtual event.
I'm delighted to be on a panel at the 4th Annual Gestalt Caribbean Leadership Conference, which will be happening virtually on Thursday, April 29th. The focus of this year's conference is leading with equity.
Register at maxineattong.com or call 724-7642 to register.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
Talk with you about institutional power, the kind of power that seeks to suppress us as human beings, the kind of power that leaves its residue on us, that leaves us confused on some level, colluding with institutional oppression and perpetuating mistreatments and hurts on other human beings, towards each other, through no fault of our own. I believe that if we have a fresh understanding of exactly what power has to do with it, that we can begin to heal from it, that we can begin to have more compassion for ourselves in the places that we might collude with institutional oppression. And we can also begin to act in such a way as to change the systems that would seek to limit us from creating a just world for all.
Welcome back to Leadership Deprogrammed, and that was a clip of Nanci Jiménez at her TEDx talk. Nanci, just before the break, you shared a little thing which I wanted to pick up on. You spoke about preferencing the opening of restaurants and bars over schools. And so in this, we're still in the pandemic. Last 2020 was particularly difficult. How have you seen that pandemic situation contributing to the existing isms or inequities in our societies?
Yeah. Well, I think it's been devastating, and it's not. I think many people have described it, public health experts and others, that it didn't exacerbate so much as it just put on full display the inequities that have been built into the systems in the United States, and globally I'm seeing the effects now. I'm heartbroken. For example, I just was watching the clip earlier that vaccine shipments are arriving in Trinidad. We know that as long as these variants continue around the world unchecked, that none of us are actually going to be safe because the virus is mutating. And yet the United States, Canada, and China are the only, we've hoarded so much of the vaccinations. The UK, we have enough vaccine to vaccinate our population 3 times, and yet there are many parts of the world who won't receive any vaccination until 2022. We have failed to understand that what affects one of us affects all of us. And the fear that the pandemic has re-stimulated and brought to light for many of us has really brought out some of our both best and worst behaviors. And equity, of course, the inequities that we're seeing around systematic oppression are playing out in full display, both at my local level here, where I live in Oregon and Portland, and at the level of the global community as well.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of the reasons why, we've been in the United States. I use this as a non-target when we talk about the global community. Those of us who live in the U.S., we've been made systematically oblivious to the lives, to the impacts of extraction and exploitation, of colonization and imperialism. We still fancy ourselves a republic, but in fact, we are not. We have been from the beginning an empire. We have been a colonial project. Behind, I think, France and the UK, we have the 3rd most colonies and territories of any other nation globally. And there's a place that we have not had a reckoning around the role of the impacts that we have had. And I don't think we can talk about equity in the United States with any level of integrity if we are not looking globally at the impacts of the decisions that we are making as a nation and the ways in which we have been, unfortunately, both benefactor but also bully. This very painful dynamic that has developed, these patterns that we carry, I carry as a USer. And so I've really, I love what, I'm alongside anybody on this journey. I am not an expert. There was a period in my life where I didn't think it made sense for me to be outside the US because the patterns that I carried were so condescending. They were so painful to me. And I needed to do some work on where was I feeling ashamed? Where was I feeling embarrassed? Where was I feeling better than also than people that weren't from the United States? And so I think these are the core struggles, are human struggles, the better than, less than struggles. I think there's places where all of us feel superior and all of us feel inferior to other people. And those hurts, I think, installed on us as young people become the scaffolding that other oppressions then build themselves on. So we're always looking for someone we can feel a little bit better than because we feel so less than someone else.
Yes.
And that's really where the system of oppression the cycle of it, we become players in it, even unawarely. Yeah. There's a part of the clip, I think, where we showed that I'm speaking outside and we actually play this game when we meet in person. It's a version of rock, paper, scissors. And that might not be a game that's familiar outside the US, but essentially you have a rock,
we play it here,
beat scissors and scissors beat. You play that there, okay. And we do it in a way that you play it evolutionarily. So you can only play with your own species when you play this game. And it's amazing how quickly it's presented as a game, kind of like the game of life. It's supposed to be fun. You're supposed to have a good time. And yet you see people oppressing others, targeting others in the game, taking each other out. You can only advance by taking someone else out. And we don't even realize we're doing it. Yeah. And I think there's a power in making conscious, aware, woke to all of us. Where are the places that I'm so injured? Where's my hurt that I am willing to hurt another human being? Yeah. And so the premise, our core body of work, our theory of change is that when we get listened to and we're able to heal, then we shift. Yeah. Not because someone told us to, not because we read a book, although books are great, not because somebody tried to persuade us or educate us. It's not about a degree. It's around injury.
Yeah.
We have to hurt people into hurting other people.
Yeah.
And so the more we heal, the more we reclaim our own power and we disrupt the cycle of oppression.
Thank you so much, Nanci, and thank you for being my guest today. And so much of what you were saying when you spoke about yourself and the system you live in, which is the wider United States, I could close my eyes and I could think of a lot of things that you've said that actually applies to us in Trinidad and Tobago. That whole idea of we are a republic as well, and yet we still have the effects of post-colonialism. We're one of the big territories in the Caribbean, along with Jamaica, and there is, that sort of tension with the smaller territory states. And so a lot of what you said, I don't think one of the things you said is that, whatever we do in one place, it sort of impacts us all over, a very systemic way of thinking. So I'm looking forward to you being with me on April 29th, 2021 at the 4th Annual Gestalt Caribbean Leadership Conference. And the topic is leading with equity. And as you can see, folks, this is what Nanci lives and breathes, really working to limit the effects and mitigate the dysfunction that comes with the inequities that we sort of born and, we are bred with. We're not born with, but we're bred with. Thank you so much, Nanci, and I'll see you on the 29th.
Thank you. It was wonderful to be with you, Maxine. I look forward to the 29th.
Thank you so much.